Hello and welcome to the second video in the Zapier HighLevel Masterclass. In this video, we're going to be going over 4 built-in functions of Zapier that are going to help you create automations and understand Zapier's potential. In order to help you learn them, I'm going to do a couple different things. The first thing I'm going to do is going to explain it, what it is, what it does. Then I'm going to give you an analogy for how you can kind of do the same thing in HighLevel within a workflow, just so you can kind of start, thinking how they kind of parallel one another. And then the third thing I'm going to do is give a use case scenario that's going to help you kind of give some additional context so that maybe you can start thinking about how you might be able to build really cool automations. So those 4 things that I'm going to be covering are webhooks, filters, formatters, and paths. Okay, and then after we go through those, I'm going to be going through this really awesome Zapier integration or Zapier HighLevel integration, which is called HL Pro Tools, a little module in Zapier that my buddy Matt DeSano made. And we're going to be going over what you can do with it and kind of covering that. And then in the next videos in the series, we're going to be creating really awesome automations using this module, using Zapier, and just building amazing stuff. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. The first tool that we're going to be covering is the webhook. So I'm going to go ahead. I've clicked the trigger here right here. Now I'm going to hit webhook. Okay. And so it's going to ask you to select an event of these 3 different options. There's only one option that you need to be concerned with most of the time. Okay. And that's going to be catch hook. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. All right. Hit continue. And at this point, I'm going to copy this URL. Okay, this is the webhook URL. This is the destination that we're going to send data to in order to catch it. Now, I want to speak a little bit about what kind of webhook this is. So what this is doing is it's actually catching a webhook, right? Now, where is the webhook coming from? Well, it will come from some form of event-driven API. Now, the cool thing about HighLevel is that you actually have the ability to configure your own event-driven APIs via the workflows. Okay, so I can go into a workflow in HighLevel and I can say anytime that this happens, right? Remember the whole trigger action kind of pairs of how automations work. Anytime that a trigger happens, then go ahead and shoot a webhook, right? So we get to decide out of all the triggers that are available in HighLevel, what do we want to go ahead and trigger this event-driven API. And so what Zapier is doing here is not. It says it's a webhook, but it's not catching it. It's not sending anything. It's catching it, right? So there are 2 parts of any kind of webhook interaction. There's the sender and then there's a receiver, okay? In this particular instance, Zapier is receiving and GoHighLevel would be sending. So I had this from a previous test. Let me go ahead and delete this really fast. So once again, right, you set this up so it had some form of a trigger, right? And then as the action, we'd have a webhook. And so I'm going to take this URL that's right here, and I'm just going to paste it right there. Now, we do have some additional things that we can do with custom data and headers. However, honestly, if you are a basic kind of, if you're a beginner when it comes to these automations, I don't believe that you really need to be messing with the custom data and headers. Maybe I'll cover in a additional video at some point. All you need to do is hit save action. Now, this is going to send all of the data pertaining to the record that triggers this flow to Zapier via the webhook. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run a test. Now, whenever we are setting up a Zapier automation or an Integrama automation, right, which is now Make, I guess, or Pabbly automation, right, we need to have data to kind of map through it. So we need to get some a test record into this flow so we can start mapping it onto these other modules, like one of these HL Pro Tool modules or something. Okay, and then we'll also be discussing how we'll be mapping it onto the filters and the formatters and all that type of stuff here in a second. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Now if I hit test trigger, I'm going to hit it one more time. Hit it one more time. Oh, okay, I think I know the problem. It's because I already tested this before. Let's try it. So actually, I think this is something that's valuable to learn. When you're testing through these, through like a workflow or something that's interacting with Zapier, you may have to send a contact through the flow multiple times. You want to make sure that allow multiple is turned on so that you can test the workflow. Which, by the way, you can do just by hitting this test workflow button. Then you can add a contact that would simulate, triggering this workflow, and then do all the steps that you have laid out in the actions. Okay. Anyway, now if I hit test trigger, it should work. Let's see. Boom. All right. So now you can see has my full name, my last name, my first name. On all this information that's related to me. Cool. So the next big thing is understanding maybe a use case for using a webhook here. So let me give you an example. We may want to go ahead and send, there are situations when it comes to, HighLevel where the SaaS configurator doesn't have all the options that you need. So you may want to go ahead and send a contact out to a Zapier automation so that you can automatically use that to trigger the automatic creation of locations, or sub accounts for your HighLevel account. So that is one particular example. Another one is, well, maybe you want to send the contact, right? Maybe your contact was marked as 1, and you want it anytime that you've successfully sold a client. You want to go ahead and shoot their information into your project manager, right? So that your team can start working on tasks. That'd be another reason why you would shoot a contact over to Zapier, right? And then the subsequent steps in the case of, let's say the sub account creation would be I go here to HL Pro Tools, right? I'd hit create location. Okay. And maybe some additional steps. Now for the project manager, I just go ahead and I'd add a step, and I go to ClickUp or something. I don't even have my ClickUp integrated, but we can see kind of what it's capable of doing. Maybe I hit create a task, right? So that's just an example of different things that you can do. So because you've now shot this information in here. Okay. Now to give an analogy to how how this is kind of working right now, it's kind of hard to do, because HighLevel doesn't actually take an inbound webhook. So there's no direct one-to-one analogy that I can give other than the idea of there being a trigger, right? Because at the end of the day, this webhook that's being caught from HighLevel is a trigger for this automation, right? So you can that's how you can kind of think about it. Now, there are actually 2 different types of webhooks. So everything I was talking about with how Zapier is receiving the webhook load is only if you use the webhook as a trigger. It's a little bit different, actually, if you use it as an action. See, if I go here and I say webhook again, well, now I have the ability to kind of create a custom request, a GET request, a POST, or a PUT request. Now, if you remember from my last video when I went over all these different possibilities, all these different ways that we can communicate with APIs, you should kind of have an idea like, oh, I'm starting to see it, right? So if I wanted to configure my own API integration with something, or if I wanted to shoot information directly to some API instead of using a module, right, I could do so here. All right. And you know what? I think I'm going to do a follow-up series on like HighLevel's API Masterclass. Maybe I'll walk through a little bit about how that works, how this works when it comes to configuring a custom webhook at that point. Because it kind of requires, in order to be able to set a webhook out somewhere, when it comes to Zapier, like for outbound webhooks, we have to create like the data structure. I don't want to get too advanced in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and close it out. But now at least you know that outbound webhooks are possible, and you also know how inbound webhooks work. You know a use case, you know an analogy, right? So we have covered webhooks. Now we're going to go on into filters in Zapier and how they work. Filters. All right, so let's go ahead and add a filter right here. So you can see here, it says only continue if. That is pretty much the how filters work. It's saying that we're only going to let a record or a contact that triggers this this kind of Zapier workflow, we're only going to let it continue if it matches a certain condition. So if let's say, let me think of an example. Let's go ahead and say that I want to, let's say that in HighLevel, I had something like this, where I had this trigger going off anytime that the opportunity status was set to 1. Okay. Then I had it shoot off a webhook to trigger this flow. Now let's say that hypothetically I was using, I had multiple services that I was selling. Okay. And that for one service in particular, I have some kind of special onboarding process or some special task that needs to get done. Okay. Now there are other ways of handling this, but just bear with me for the purposes of this example. So let's say that I need to create a task for that particular sales type, right? In my like ClickUp manager. But I need to basically filter, let's say I want to go ahead and create a new task. But I basically need to filter out all the people who did not buy that particular product. So, I'd have to also pause it here just for the sake of the example, but there's another workflow that every single time that, we sell a certain type of product, that we add a tag to it manually. Then what I do, so the opportunity status is 1, right? So it triggers this, then shoots a webhook over to Zapier. Zapier catches the webhook, then goes into a filter, right? So what I'd want to do is I'd want to go to, let's say, tags. Okay. So I'd say tags, which will basically be a comma separated list, contains, and then say, product 1. Okay. Now you can kind of see here, it's very similar to, a type of condition that we could set up in a HighLevel workflow, right? It has and or. Okay. So I could say tags contain product 1, or let's say maybe there's a second product that I wanted to also have trigger this task, but nothing else. I could say tags contains product 3. Okay. But maybe just the tag isn't enough. Let's say that for some reason I wanted to make sure that, let's see, does it show me the assigned user here? Let's say that for some reason I wanted to ensure, that they had their phone number. Not only do they need to have the correct tag, but they also have to have a value in their phone number field that actually exists. Right? So this is just all for the sake of demonstration here. There we go. So now, anytime that a contact comes through here that contains either the tag product 1 or product 3, and they also have a phone number that exists, right, they'll trigger it. Everything else will be filtered out, right? So if they don't have a phone number that exists, if they don't have any value in that field, it won't work, right? Even if they do have those tags. So it's very interesting. It's very cool. All the stuff that you can kind of start to build using these conditions. Now, if I were to give you an analogy to something in HighLevel, it would kind of look like this, right? I could come in here and I could say that I think what we were saying, tags includes contact or product 1. Okay. And phone is not empty. Okay. So you can see that the way that this condition works is there's this branch right? And this branch is the outcome where this condition is actually met. And then everything else goes to none. Okay, so nothing is actually happening when this condition is not met. So that's kind of how you can think of a filter. Now, the next major thing that we're going to be covering is actually something called a formatter, which has a different function, but it's actually a very important and very useful function. So let's go ahead and pull up formatter here. Formatter by Zapier. Perfect. And so you can see here that there are 4 different options. We can format the date and time, right? So we can add or subtract time. If there are numbers that are coming in, we can go ahead and do mathematical operations. We can reformat currencies, and we can do other things. If it's a text field that we're trying to format, we can work with the text data to find and replace different snippets within the text itself, capitalize, right, and remove HTML and do more. The fourth thing that we can do is, or actually it's kind of a larger kind of miscellaneous category almost. You can see here that this is kind of these, this is kind of a list of all the different things that you can do within this kind of miscellaneous category. So we can import a CSV file, we can itemize a line, we can do a lookup table, we can pick from a list, we can do a text to line item to text, right? But for the most part, like when it comes to my own personal usage of the formatter here within Zapier, I tend to use things more like the number manipulation, the date and time manipulators. Now, unlike both filters and webhooks, right, there's not a clear analogy here for the formatter module because there is simply no formatting that's doable within a HighLevel workflow. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cover a potential use case. Let's say that similarly to one of our other hypothetical scenarios, a contact has been marked as 1. Okay, we have that trigger a workflow, and then we have that, I'm just going to remove this condition here because it's not really relevant. So do I still have it? There it is. And then we have it go ahead and trigger a webhook here. So what we want to do is we want to add this contact to our ClickUp, okay, manager, project manager. But what we need to do is we want to create a date, which is the project delivery date. Let's say that for every single time that you have a new customer, right, you try to finalize everything by 30 days after their purchase. Now, in order to do that, we need to go ahead and pull up this formatter, right? And right here in this input, this is where it gets a little bit unconventional. We're actually going to put a little custom value, okay? Now I need to actually add this right here. There we are. So just for, if you're watching that again, this is what it is, right? So 2 open curly braces, then zap underscore meta underscore human underscore now, and then 2 close braces. Boom. So that's going to take the current time and date. And so what we're going to do, so because this is sent off right after the person is marked as 1, right, then we know that it is going to be, the due date will be 30 days from right now. So we get right now's time through inserting that custom value into this input field after selecting the date and time event and the add/subtract time transformer here. And then we're going to go ahead and we can look here. So it wants us to, we can do plus, then a integer, then we can say hours or minute or month, right? Now, let's just say, for the sake of the example, it's plus 1 month. 2 format. Let's just say that we want the month it in this format here. And then we should be fine because it's going to auto detect the format here. Or actually, let's make sure, let's actually get it right into the same format here. So that's going to be, there we are. So now if I hit continue, right? I can test the action here. Perfect. So 30 days, or 1 month from today, will be the 10th of March. Okay, so then when I go into this ClickUp here, right, when I go to set up my task, right, and I go and populate the fields, for it, so start date and end date, for the start date, I'm going to re-enter kind of this little custom value here, and then for the due date, I'm going to map the results from here. Okay. Unfortunately, let's see, I might have one in here. So just so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like to map something here in Zapier, right? It's telling us all the information that's available, and then these different asterisks tell us which ones are required. So you see here, there's a start date. I'm just going to copy and paste this value, okay? And then for the due date, I'm going to map the value from this thing that was generated in the second step. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say the output right there, boom, right? So then I fill the rest of this out with, let's say my full name, right? I could write some generic description or whatever for the the task, right? And kind of set it up all the same way that I would set it up manually there in ClickUp. So that is an example of how we would be using the formatter, right? Now there are many other things that you can do with it. As I said before, right, you can manipulate numbers, you can manipulate text, you can find certain patterns in text, etc. So there's really quite a lot that you can do with this. So really, I think ultimately where you want to be is you want to familiarize yourself with enough of its function that you can kind of start imagining the logic. Then you go in here and you try to figure out how you can make your kind of vision kind of come into fruition, right, with the tools that you have access to. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into paths. All right, now, so in order to set up paths, you need to go to the last step in the Zap because it only works in the last step, okay? So we go here, and then I hit path. Now, you can see I have the ability to add, I think, up to 5. Does that let me add more? Yeah, so there are 5 possible paths that we can create. And then, just so you know, pro tip, okay, we can go over here and I can add paths within paths, okay? So we can have a little pathception, all right, but I'm not even going to get into that. All right, so what are paths? What do they do? Well, they're basically saying that, hey, when we meet this condition, then go down this path, right? If we meet this condition, then go down this path. So it's kind of like, you could kind of think of it like a condition in HighLevel, where we have all these different branches. So let's say, just to fill it with nonsense, just for the sake of the example, boom, right? Let me just add another one. Right, so now you can kind of see in HighLevel, we also have the ability to create paths, right? Those paths are called branches within conditions. Okay, so let's say that what you wanted to do here is a contact was marked as 1, okay, and you wanted to they were marked as 1, they just purchased a SaaS plan. Now you're not, let's say for the sake of instance, let's say that maybe you have five different plans that you offer instead of the 3 that come with the SaaS configurator. So you want to go ahead and automatically create the accounts outside of the SaaS configurator, right, directly with HighLevel's API. Well, then what you'd want to do is, whenever anybody in a separate workflow other than this, I'll kind of walk through kind of what that would end up looking like. We would say order form submission, right? And then I would basically just create 5 of these, right? And I don't actually even have one of those set up on this account, but we go ahead and specify further in that order submission thing, what product we wanted. Let's say that we had five products that we had in a particular funnel, right? So we create one trigger for each funnel product. Right, then we can go ahead and we could set it up like this so that we had basically branches here and conditions that were looking to see what the workflow trigger was. So we create 5 of those, one for each product. So we'd have 5 branches. Just for the sake of me having, some conditions on here, I'm just going to create some BS conditions right now. Okay, and so now we have 5 branches, one for each product. And then we want to go ahead and add a tag. Now, optionally, instead of having the first workflow that I had up before, what you could have here is, we could hypothetically, go ahead and add a contact here, right? Or a tag here rather. So one's like product 1, put that here. Okay, and then after all these, we can start pitting these webhook steps. So for this particular instance, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this random URL into this step. Okay, and so then now, someone buys a product, right? One of the 5, it's going to come down here. It's going to conditionally go, to the correct, branch here. It's going to add the particular tag, and then it's going to send a webhook, right? Now, optionally, and just because of my OCD, one potential option here is you could have put the webhook, or even let's say, like just in this first branch or something. Because I'm sorry, I'm making this and I'm like cringing because like this is not how I would actually set up a workflow. Basically, instead of creating the webhook step, 5 different times with the same URL, what you could do is you could have a go-to step, and then you could go ahead and do the same thing for all these, so they're all referencing the same thing. Anyway, okay, I'm not going to get too lost in that. Anyway, so now they're all coming in, right? Going down the right branch, getting the right tag, and then they're being sent through the webhook. So now, let's just ignore this formatter. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because that was part of the previous example. But now I can go in here in these different paths and I can say, tags, contains product 1, right? And so now anytime that a product contains, or a record that's sent through here contains product 1, right, it'll go ahead and go through that first path. So what we go ahead and do is the same thing for product 2 here. Oops. And you kind of get the idea. I don't think I need to go and program the conditions and everything. And so after that, right now we need to start creating the different locations. So let's go back to the kind of the use case scenario here, right? So, you have 5 different packages, but let's say that you had, different snapshot on every single, package that you offered, right? Then I can go in here to edit, right? And in this following step, I pull up HL Pro Tools, and then I hit create location. And let me go ahead and sign in. So now I've gone ahead and I've logged in here. I can go to set up action, right? Now I can start mapping out all the stuff that we caught up here in this webhook, right? Email, let's say phone, business name. I can map out all this stuff, right? And then I can set up the different settings for the particular location, right? If I collected their Twilio information, I could collect it here if the client wanted to use their own Twilio information. And then I could then go ahead and select the correct snapshot, right, from the ones that are currently in my account. And then I go ahead, you make sure and fill out all the required fields, and you hit continue, right? And now, anytime that someone has the product one tag, right, they're going to be going and having the correct snapshot created for them. Now, you go ahead and do the same exact thing for all these different pathways. Okay, so pathways are an extremely powerful tool here within Zapier. And so all of these things, all of these 4 different tools that we've covered so far are going to be extremely useful as you are creating really awesome automations between HighLevel and other softwares. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the HL Pro Tools module and all the stuff that it can do. We briefly covered just one of the features here in this HL Pro Tools Zapier module, but there's actually quite a lot of stuff that you can do with it. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to walk through all these different features, right? And then in the following videos, I'm going to be actually building real world zaps that have real world value with this module. So you can see me do it in real time. All right, so all the different actions here are split into 2 categories, right? There's create, right? And then there's search. Hey, remember when we were talking about the different types of API requests we could make, right? There's post and there's get. Well, that's kind of what's happening here, right? All of these are post requests that it's making, right? Or upsert requests, right? Which are just a different type of post. Where it's either creating new objects or it's updating the objects that currently exist, right? Those are posts. And then search is doing a lookup. It's trying to get records, okay? And so we'll go ahead and start just listing through all the things you can do here in the kind of create section, right? So we can book appointments. We can add contacts to particular workflows. We can create a calendar service. We can create contacts, create locations like the one that I showed you, create team calendars, create users. We also have the ability to delete a contact. We have the ability to update calendar services, update contacts, update locations. We can update the SaaS subscription. So we can go and update the SaaS subscription for a particular customer in HighLevel if we're given the customer ID, subscription, and location ID, right? So we can update their SaaS subscription at the level of their location. We can update a particular user. And then we can go ahead and when it comes to the search category, we can look up a calendar service. We can look up a contact, right? So given an email or given a contact ID, right? We can start pulling more information about that contact through. We can look up certain custom values. We can look up locations. We can look up SaaS locations and look up users. Now, you may be wondering, Sam, why would I use this HL Pro Tools module? The reason why you would use it is because the lead connector module that HighLevel has built natively for Zapier, it's meant to be gray labeled, right? It's meant to be able to sell or to integrate as a part of your offer to people's end clients, either as agency clients or as SaaS clients, right? And so they don't want to put a bunch of endpoints in there that kind of make this seem like it's not your software, right? So this is where HL Pro Tools comes in, and it adds things like looking up locations or creating locations. All of these endpoints aren't available within the currently connected Zapier module. So it's really solving a really awesome problem by bringing instead of having to code all these API integrations yourself, you're now able to just come in here really easily and do things like book appointments or create locations and all these other things. So with that being said, if you are looking to get your hands on the HL Pro Tools Zapier module, if you go to the link down below, I do have a special deal that Matt Tisano and I have been working on, where we're just trying to stack literally as much value as possible. It is an absurd offer, so just go ahead and check it out. And stay tuned for the upcoming videos where we actually go ahead, take the HL Pro Tools module, right? We take HighLevel, right? We take Zapier, and we start building really cool automations that have real world business value, so that you can see my thought process from the very beginning to the end of it. It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited to share that with you. So I will see you next time.